Welcome back everybody, time to battle, hop into some games. There we go, got our first opponent. And a pretty solid opening hand that we're going to keep. Wouldn't mind a zero power, but other than that the hand's pretty good. And we have a second 2-drop in case we miss our third power. But there's our third power already, so perfect. And I'm gonna open with the Warcry unit first of all. This is like a more valuable unit in the long run. Second of all, the earlier we can Warcry, the better. Okay, so it's actually kind of interesting here. Given that he didn't do anything here, I'm kind of inclined to just play Champion of Glory with backup Torch. But I am not sure. Like, we could also Scepter, which would still leave us with a unit and give us an extra Warcry this turn, but then he can trade with his sword. I think I'll just hold that back for the familiar and just basically punish his Sword of Icaria, which he should probably have at this point if he has no other interaction so far, since he should have some form of interaction. And I think at worst he's gonna play like a Bailiff or Enforcer here, and then we can torch that. Granted, against an Enforcer playing the champion is not the best line, but he has the Sword of Icaria kind of as expected. Playing like this is pretty important against Armory, usually to play around their weapons to deny them tempo and generate tempo ourselves. I think I'm gonna play the 2-2. We have a backup, and if he decides to Runehammer this, that's alright. Then we can play the next, pressure more, and set up a board where we still have one unit left post Harsh Rule. And if he doesn't have an answer, we get to Shogun Scepter, the better unit. And just get in. Oh, he doesn't have a weapon to punish it. And next turn we can potentially silence this guy and attack. But it doesn't even do damage. Whether we silence it or not, so might actually just not silence it at all. Yeah, I think there's not really any point in silencing it. Gonna attack with everything to make sure we kill the Runehammer. And, I mean, the 2 units we could potentially lose both have Warcry, so it's not that big of a deal. Not gonna use the Finest Hour here. No point in doing so. And I'll drop a Familiar in case he has an Harsh Rule. So that we are still left with a body in play post Harsh Rule, even though it's not a great one and we don't have a weapon right now. That's alright. That's kind of aggressive, I think. That's fine. I'll take it. Force power, definitely not bad. And I think I'm gonna offer the Oni Ronin as well. But I'm not gonna trade here. Instead, I think I wanna silence this to set up potential double block and leave open Finest Hour as protection against a relic weapon, and also not play Oni Ronin into a potential Harsh Rule, because now he basically trades 1-for-1 with the Harsh Rule. He trades Harsh Rule and 2 of his units for more or less 3 of our cards, not even 3 because the Silver Wing is gonna survive, so Harsh Rule is very unattractive right now for him. And they only wouldn't do that much on the board anyway. It's more important to protect our flyers against relic weapons because he has the ground blockers. No block. He might be forced into like a 4-power Harsh Rule. No, he's just gonna go for its dash. on 2 weapons, it's not that big of a deal, plus we have the finest hour to protect our Valkyrie Enforcer against both weapons, which is great. I think I'm just gonna... It's interesting. I mean, we can also attack with Champion of Glory, but that will most likely make us lose our finest hour, but it takes away one of his units, but then he's just not gonna attack with this, so it doesn't really help us. I think the best way is just not attacking with Champion of Glory, hit him for 4. At this point probably drop Oni, and I'm not gonna play Monument because the 5th power is not gonna do anything to us, and if we draw a 6th, this becomes good on our familiar, so... That looks heavily like a harsh rule, so I'm inclined to just double block here. Not take unnecessary damage. Yep. There's the harsh rule. It's a bit unfortunate because now he has the weapon to clean this off. So it was probably a mistake to play the Oni Ronin, to be honest. Because now he's like out of torch range, we have no unit. Ah, that's good. Let's hope he doesn't have a Vanquish or another harsh rule. Then we are in decent shape. That is not gonna be good enough. It's gonna jump block. Yep, it's fine. So this guy might ride it to victory. But yeah, the Oni was probably a bit too ambitious. I guess the other option could have been to just finest hour on our turn to deal 3 more damage, so that if he harsh rolls he dies, and even if he weapons we only lose 1 flyer. To put us in a position to draw 5th power to Monument to win. I'm not sure. Alright, so we are not even lethal anymore. But he's probably gonna jump block anyway. We'll see. Yep. There goes the jump block. And if we draw a blade, he just dies. So let's see. Oh, that's annoying. So we basically want to draw a blade by now or another flyer. Since even a torch in this turn is not gonna do a whole lot for us. He can drag out this game a long time now. But so far he's only just dragging it out. He might get to a point where he considers like not jump blocking anymore, we'll see. And he definitely has the... he drew the harsh roll. I was about to say he definitely has the 5 power weapon to take down an extra unit that is small enough. So we're probably gonna lose from here on out. Partially due to my lapse of judgment on the Oni Ronin. But yeah, it's like a very tricky dance with Amory to have enough threats in play to not be locked out by like a weapon and not giving them too much value from their harsh rule, like this 1-2 punch of weapons punishing too few units and rule punishing too many units puts you into a very tight spot of where you have the right amount of units in play, and it's not always easy to figure out what that amount is. And we failed in this game and lost it. We could have possibly won this with slightly different play. So that loss was at least partially, if not fully, on us. And sometimes, even if it might look like the wrong decision, it was the right decision, just didn't pay off. Like, sometimes you just have to put the opponent on Harshal if you have kind of read that he is not likely to have one. You just have to play as if he doesn't have one, because you might not be able to win otherwise. And then if he has one anyway and played in a way that made this unlikely because he played weird, or he just drew it off the top, then so be it, and we just lose. This is a pretty solid hand, gonna keep it. Gonna use this on turn 1 on Justice. Usually you want to get them out of the way as soon as possible if I know what I want to use them on. So the last power in my hand can be a sigil in case I draw a Seed of Glory, for example. Sequencing your power cards is definitely an important skill in a lot of decks, especially decks with Diplomatic Seal. As you can see, now in time for third influence we draw second Diplomatic Seal to set up double Justice, and are left with a sigil in hand, which is pretty good. And we even have a Finest Hour to protect our Champion of Glory against a potential Suffocant. Or not. This is likely Suchu's Xenon Control, or like basically definitely at this point. And get in for 5 and have all the reactive options available to keep up the pressure. Might drop a Titan here. No, not a Titan. It's a bit unfortunate, but that only means our Oni likely has to stay home. Yep. Oni is gonna stay home, so we don't get 2 for 1. And I think I'll prefer this here, because this can counter Suffocate and largely does the same otherwise. And also has some more potential with Oni Ronin against other units that have no Death Touch. That we have Vanquish, and yeah, I mean, this game is like unwinnable for him now. We just have such a huge lead on the board. That's like the thing, once we had like these 3 units in play and 3 different ways to answer whatever he's doing, there's no coming back. And it's that. This matchup is likely pretty good for Rakano, unless they draw very specific cards, like enough of their cheap early interaction to lock us down. And also basically requires us to be a bit light on early units, which we definitely weren't in this game. Alright, we found our last opponent for this video. Kaladinas. And we have once again a really good hand, so we're going to keep it. As you can see, running like 29 power also has a really nice effect on like the first hands. Not having to redraw is always better than having to redraw, because the less likely we are to having to redraw, the less likely we are to redraw into like a hand that creates a non-game and still leaves us with the option to redraw when we have a first hand that is bad. But ideally I prefer to build my decks in a way that I have to redraw as little as possible, because keep in mind, the redraw is a one-time deal. So if you redraw into like a, with Rakano into like a 5 power 2 card hand, that is terrible. You're not very likely to win a game with a hand like this. So it is much better to just have the highest possible percentage of keepable opening hands on the first try, and only redraw the hands that are just bad. Like with the 8 1-drop Rakano, I would fairly aggressively redraw hands that have 0 1-drops, but like with this version with 4 1-drops, like I'm not gonna redraw hands that don't have a 1-drop, for example. Okay, we got Armory again, and our hand is really weak against Armory, as you can see, and the dreaded thing with Familiar happened that I talked about, so this game is gonna not be remotely close to the last one. The last one was very likely winnable and my mistake to lose, but this one is just like one of these unwinnable games against Armory. On the draw, no 1-drop, light on units, having to play Familiar into a Sword of Icaria. All the things you don't want to happen in this matchup. And drawing like this is adding insult to injury, basically. And if Armory has the time to freely rise to the challenge against Rakano, then you're definitely in a losing position. I mean, we're getting beat down by Rakano, by Armory, so this is over. But yeah, I mean, that's why Rakano is kind of afraid of Armory. Although I so far have a positive record against Armory still, even though the matchup is supposed to be bad. So I'm not sure if it's maybe better than people think it is, or if I'm just running well. Not sure. Alright, that's it for the first half of the games. Stay tuned for 3 more games in the second part of the games videos. See you in a moment. Stay tuned.